When I say that Canada is going the way of the commie, I'm not trying to be funny or glib.
I'm actually understating the severity of the problem in Canada.
Viva Frei, former Montreal litigator turned current Florida rumbler. In my home office, it is beautiful here in Florida, and I'm going back to Canada for the winter break, and I dare say I'm not too excited to go back to the sub-zero communism in Canada. And if you've been following me for any period of time, you know that I use the word communism quite often to describe the state of affairs in Canada, and some of you say, Viva, it's not communism. Okay, it's statism, whatever you want to call it. It is not freedom anymore, and if you had any lingering doubts, the news coming out of Canada will blow your freaking mind. But to do this, we've got to take a trip across the world, starting in Ukraine. Now, many of you know that we have been supporting the fight for democracy out of the democracy that is Ukraine for several years now, costing hundreds of billions of dollars, if not trillions total. We are supporting democracy in a country that has suspended elections indefinitely. But don't take my word for it. Here is an article from a publication called, and I'm not joking, the Journal of Democracy, talking about how it's not such a big deal that they're not holding elections in the democracy of Ukraine. If the irony doesn't make you want to puke, you've got no gag reflex. Journal of Democracy by Anna Romandash, April 2024. Were it not for Russia's war, Ukrainian citizens would have gone to the polls a few weeks ago to pick their president. They would have voted last year too in parliamentary elections scheduled for October, yet neither contest happened. Ukraine's constitution prohibits elections under martial law, which President Volodymyr Zelensky declared when Russia launched its invasion on 24 February 2022 and has been in force ever since. In order to protect democracy and in the fight for democracy, we need to indefinitely suspend democratic elections. Even without the law, organizing mass elections amid an ongoing invasion poses serious practical challenges. How to run the vote in Russian-occupied territories, how to guarantee voters' safety, what to do about the millions of refugees abroad, and how to provide the necessary time and space for political campaigning. Plus, running elections costs money, and the Russian assault has cost Ukraine not only invaluable losses in human life and generational trauma, but billions of dollars for defense and reconstruction, with the economic impact of the war exceeding $51 billion per year. Yet without fair elections, can Ukraine have a just democracy? As the country and its people battle to survive, do elections even matter right now? And to quote Ace Ventura,
good question, Aguado.
Do elections even matter in a country that is purportedly a democracy fighting for its own survival? Do you need to hold elections in order to determine if the president who has currently brought the country into war willingly or unwillingly, some would say willingly, whether or not that president should be replaced? Some might say that they're not holding elections not because they can't, as we will see in a second, but because they do not want to. The they being Zelensky, because he knows he is not popular and won't survive an election, which has brought that country into 2 years of total devastation. But yeah, it's too dangerous to hold elections. How do you do it? They're spending too much money fighting the war. How do you ensure safe elections? But the utter insanity and intellectual dishonesty of this position, they have to suspend elections because martial law has been declared, because how do you conduct safe elections during a time of war when you find out that the Kyiv nightlife is bustling and in fact more popular now than it was before the invasion? You'll ask yourself, how can you go out to bars at night in a world where it's too dangerous to go out and vote during the day? And again, don't take my word for it. Let's go to an article in the propaganda rag CBS News. CBS News, Ukraine's nightlife is thriving despite Russia's war, even where it has had to rise from the ashes. July 31, 2023. Kharkiv, Ukraine. A summer's evening, a sidewalk cafe, smiling friends. It could have been a scene from almost anywhere, but it's not anywhere. It's Kharkiv, not far from the Russian border in eastern Ukraine and within easy reach of missiles and airstrikes. Despite the missiles, Ukraine's nightlife is rocking. Bars and clubs are full. We visited one and found the place jumping, with music pumping, drinks flowing freely, and young Ukrainians dancing like there's no tomorrow. Here's a fun fact. There are now more bars and restaurants open in the capital city of Kyiv than there were before the start of Russia's full-scale invasion more than 17 months ago. So if we just work real hard to cram this circle peg into that square hole, or the other way around, I forget which, it's so risky. It's such a time of war that martial law needs to be declared and you cannot conduct safe elections while the nightlife is bustling and in fact more popular than it was before the invasion. That does not add up, dear Watson.
How are you gonna solve that one?
So while the West fights for the democracy of Ukraine, Ukraine suspends elections indefinitely, elections which could in theory put an end to this very conflict, and we still say that we're fighting for democracy while destroying the very foundation of democracy. That doesn't sound a whole hell of a lot like democracy. That sounds a lot like statism, fascism, communism, whatever the heck you want to call it. It is the opposite of democracy. Enter Canada.
How do we get over this funk?
Now, for those of you who may not know, under the reign of Justin Trudeau, who has great admiration for the basic dictatorship of China, Canada has basically gone full commie. Earlier this week, Justin Trudeau put out a tweet addressing how he's going to tackle the housing crisis in Canada, because if you don't know, there is a serious housing crisis in Canada. In the tweet, Justin Trudeau announces how they're going to crack down on the private use of Airbnbs for the purposes of rental properties to unlock the capacity of housing for Canadians. That sounds a whole hell of a lot like communism. From Justin Trudeau at Justin Trudeau, there are more than 200,000 short-term rentals across the country, like Airbnbs and Verbos, that could be turned into housing. So we're giving cities more resources to crack down on those rentals and unlock more homes for Canadians. Now, before I went crazy and replied, I had to make sure that this was not, in fact, Justin Trudeau's parody account called Justin Trudeau's Ego, because reading this, it actually sounded like bona fide parody. It is not parody. It's actually Justin Trudeau announcing how they're going to crack down on the private use of private property in order to unlock that property for the purposes of addressing a housing crisis of Justin Trudeau's own creation. And after I ensured that this was not, in fact, a parody account, I replied as follows.
Everyone, let's take a brief pause from this vlog for a word from our sponsor. Big changes are on the horizon. Very soon, Trump will be back in office and RFK Jr. will be taking over the CDC, NIH, FDA. Get ready for the shakeup. RFK even posted, the FDA's war on public health is about to end, calling out their suppression of treatments like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and essential vitamins. The wellness company is already ahead of the curve with emergency kits that are stocked with these limited access medications. These kits cut through the red tape, especially during the holiday seasons when getting sick during travel is the norm. Be prepared for over 30 illnesses without stepping into an urgent care. I'm talking ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, Z-Pak, amoxicillin, everything you need to take control of your health. Their guidebook outlines common treatments for UTIs, strep throat, bacterial infections, respiratory illness, and more. All it takes is filling out a digital intake form and your kit arrives to your door in 1 to 2 weeks. And they even have emergency kits for kids. No more sick inconveniences during the holidays. Order your kit now by heading over to twc.health/Viva. Gets you $30 off and free shipping. twc.health/Viva, $30 off and free shipping, available only for US residents. And now back to the vlog.
Viva Frei at the Viva Frei. Appreciate the euphemisms. Quote, crack down, end quote. Prohibit private use of private property. Quote, unlock, end quote. Nationalize private property. Communism. We are witnessing communism, statism, fascism, whatever the hell you want to call it. We are witnessing this from Eastern Europe all the way to Canada. Justin Trudeau saying, yeah, we're going to go ahead and basically nationalize private property in order to address a housing crisis, which is a crisis of his own manufacture, by importing en masse legal, illegal, foreign people into Canada when the housing system can't accommodate it. And yeah, so Justin Trudeau, in order to solve the problem he created, is going to nationalize private property, crack down on private use of private property. But wait, there's actually more. In the quest to control how Canadians can use their own private property, Justin Trudeau, going full commie yet again, has announced yet more bans on firearms out of Canada. You will not believe where this goes, because it ties in the perfect bow. The communism coming out of Canada, the martial law being declared in Ukraine, all of these countries fighting for democracy and not living by any form of democracy. From the Associated Press, Ottawa, Ontario. Canada said Thursday it is outlawing another 324 firearm varieties. Guns the public safety minister said belong on the battlefield, not in the hands of hunters or sport shooters. Ottawa also said it is working with the government of Ukraine to see how the guns can be donated to support the fight against Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The move follows the May 2020 ban of 1,500 makes and models of firearms, a number that grew to more than 2,000 by November of this year as new variants were identified. The latest restriction, announced Thursday by Public Safety Minister Dominique LeBlanc, follows expressions of concern from gun control advocates that many assault-style firearms were not included in the 2020 ban. Quote, this means these firearms can no longer be used, end quote, LeBlanc said. I actually covered that ban back in the day with a standalone car vlog. I'll include a small clip from that so you can compare and contrast the 2020 Canadian Viva to the 2024 American Viva. I'm not yet American, but I'm in Florida. You know what I mean. Despite the reduced in-person sittings, Justin Trudeau overnight came in with a sweeping ban on over 1,500 military-grade assault rifles. How did that happen? Well, this is what our neighbors to the south might not fully understand. This didn't come by way of legislation that was debated and passed. This came by way of what is called an order in council. And what is an order in council? I'll read you the legalese and then I'll break it down simply. Orders in council are not discussed by Parliament and do not require legislation by Parliament before being implemented. When it comes to orders in council, there are no bills that are drafted. There is no parliamentary debate. There is the Governor General who is appointed by the Prime Minister saying, it is law, therefore it is law. But reading the words of Dominique LeBlanc on paper don't do it justice. When you listen to this video, you are going to understand that the governments of the world, the governments of the West, are not interested in democracy. They are not interested in the people. They are interested interested in consolidating power and ensuring that the people never again have that power. And if you haven't seen the video yet, here's the video and try not to vomit as you watch it.
Today, the government is adding a further 324 unique makes and models of assault-style firearms to the list of prohibited firearms in Canada. This prohibition takes effect immediately. This means these firearms can no longer be legally used, sold, or imported in Canada, and can only be transferred or transported under extremely limited circumstances. As part of that process, the government of Canada has committed to the Ukrainian government, to identify whether some of these guns could be donated to support the fight for democracy in Ukraine. As part of that process, the government of Canada has committed to the Ukrainian government to identify whether some of these guns could be donated to support the fight for democracy in Ukraine.
In order to defend democracy, we need to indefinitely suspend democracy. In order to preserve democracy, we need to siphon off hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars to fight for a country that itself is suspending democracy, taking away the rights of Canadian citizens, taking away their firearms from law-abiding citizens, and then donating them to Ukraine, the country that will not hold elections indefinitely. And I've got to tell you, if that makes sense to you, you might be Justin Trudeau,
Or you might just be a commie.
and most importantly, if you haven't yet done it, take 3 seconds, go down there, make sure that you're subscribed, turn on notifications, drop a comment in the comment section below because it feeds the algorithm. If any of this makes any sense to you, you either understand exactly where it's going or you don't understand where it's going. And if that hasn't horrified you enough, just wait for the after credits part of this vlog. But you know what to do, everybody. Share to help the channel grow. Most importantly, exercise, eat healthy, sunlight, talk to people in real life, and now you unfortunately know your vlog. Peace out, peeps. Booyah!
The Soviet Union? I thought you guys broke up.
Yes, that's what we wanted you to think.